Today we're diving into a really powerful piece of writing, one that was born from a horrifying injustice. It's Voltaire's 1763 Treatise on Tolerance. And look, this wasn't some stuffy, abstract philosophy. It was an urgent, passionate cry for help in response to a real-world tragedy. Right from the start, Voltaire doesn't open with theory. He hits you with this chilling warning. He's telling us that when reason just completely fails, when passion and fanaticism take over, nobody is safe. And this wasn't just some hypothetical. He was telling the true story of a man named Jean Calas. All right, so let's set the scene. Our story starts in Toulouse, France, a city that was just simmering with religious tension. And it's here that a respected Protestant merchant, Jean Calas, and his family would get caught in the middle of a terrible event that would literally ignite a battle for reason itself. The timeline here it's just shocking how fast this all went down. It kicks off in October 1761 with a private family tragedy. But almost immediately, a mob, just completely fueled by religious hate, makes up a story. The authorities, instead of, investigating, arrest the entire family based on nothing but rumors. And by March of the next year, with still zero proof, Jean Calas is condemned by a razor-thin vote and then brutally executed. Think about that. In just a few months, a personal tragedy was twisted into a state-sanctioned murder. So what on earth could drive judges to execute a man with no evidence? Well, Voltaire gives it a name: fanaticism. He calls it a sickness of the mind, a kind of deluded religion that actively pushes away proof. In fact, he says, the more you try to challenge it with reason and facts, the angrier and more violent it gets. Now, you have to understand, this injustice didn't just pop up out of nowhere. At the very moment this trial was happening, Toulouse was getting ready to celebrate the 200th anniversary of its own massacre of 4,000 Protestants. So the public mood was, as Voltaire put it, heated up. The Calas family became this convenient, symbolic sacrifice for a really grim and violent festival. As you can imagine, the execution of an innocent man fueled by pure hatred just absolutely horrified Voltaire. He felt like he had to pick up his pen, not just to clear one man's name, but to turn this specific, awful case into a universal argument against the poison of intolerance everywhere. See, for Voltaire, this was way bigger than just one family. He saw Jean Calas as a symptom of a much deeper disease. He was basically putting the whole concept of religious persecution on trial for the entire world to see. His argument? Any religion that's used to justify cruelty is a religion that has been abused. Simple as that. So Voltaire just cuts through all the noise, all the complex theology and the legal arguments, and he boils the entire issue down to this one fundamental question. Should religion be barbaric, or should it be charitable? I mean, for him, the answer was pretty obvious. Okay, so amidst all this darkness, we finally get a glimmer of hope. When the widow, Madame Calas, finally gets to Paris, she finds a completely different world. And Voltaire makes a point of this stark contrast. In the provincial city of Toulouse, fanaticism ruled the day. But in the more enlightened capital, reason won out. People actually listened to her, they helped her, they wept with her, and suddenly justice was finally possible. So, now that he's shown us the human cost, the absolute tragedy of intolerance, Voltaire shifts gears. He's about to systematically tear down every single argument people had used for centuries to justify it. He's basically deconstructing the very foundation of religious persecution. He starts by forcing the reader to confront where this violent impulse even comes from. Is this cruelty something divine, something baked into the natural order by God? Or is it something ugly and barbaric that we as humans just made up? And his answer is just brilliant. He argues that intolerance is actually unnatural. Tigers, he says, kill to eat to survive. But us, he says, we wipe each other out over paragraphs, over disagreements about words in a book. He puts this law of tigers right next to the true law of humanity. Treat others how you want to be treated. His conclusion? Religious intolerance is way more horrific than the law of the jungle. And then, in a really clever move, Voltaire uses scripture against the fanatics themselves. He points out that the intolerant God they're preaching about isn't even consistent with their own holy book. He lists examples where the God of the Old Testament tolerated foreign gods, even called non-believing kings his servant and anointed. Voltaire's challenge is simple. If God himself could be flexible, who are we mortals to be so brutally rigid? And he's not done yet. He keeps building his case by looking at the history of the church itself. He points out that if the apostles, guys like Peter and Paul, could have fundamental disagreements without persecuting each other, then later generations have absolutely no excuse for burning people at the stake over much smaller differences. All right, so after just demolishing the arguments that were used to justify intolerance, Voltaire starts to build the case for tolerance, and he moves away from theory here and starts using the real world as his evidence. Now, he directly takes on the biggest fear that the authorities had at the time, which was that if you allow religious diversity, it's just going to lead to chaos and civil war. His opponents were all screaming that tolerance was dangerous. So, what did Voltaire do? He said, okay, let's look at the evidence. And his evidence literally spans the globe. He points to Holland, where all these different religions lived together as brothers, to England, where philosophy had disarmed superstition, to Pennsylvania, where discord was basically unknown. He even points to the massive Turkish and Chinese empires, which peacefully governed tons of different beliefs. In all these places, tolerance wasn't a weakness leading to chaos. It was a source of strength and stability. So when you actually look at the historical record, the conclusion is, well, it's crystal clear. The data couldn't point more obviously in one direction. Intolerance is what breeds violence and war, while tolerance fosters peace. It all boils down to this one powerful sentence that just sums up his entire evidence-based argument. It's a direct challenge to the powers that be. The danger isn't in letting people be different. The real danger, the one that has historically covered the earth with carnage, is trying to force everyone to be the same. So where does that leave us? What's the ultimate takeaway from this treatise that was written over 250 years ago? What's Voltaire's enduring message for us today? Voltaire's cure for this sickness of fanaticism wasn't more violence, or more laws, or more oppression. No, it was the steady, patient application of human reason. He believed that reason, even though it works slowly, is the only thing that can truly enlighten people and heal the divisions that fanaticism creates. And the reason this still matters so much today is that this core conflict, the one at the heart of the Jean Calas affair, it never really went away, did it? The struggle between reason and fanaticism, between humanity and cruelty, that's a battle that every single generation has to fight in its own time. And that leaves us with a pretty heavy final thought. The forces of error, passion, and fanaticism that killed Jean Calas, they're still with us. So the responsibility to answer Voltaire's call, to champion reason, to defend the innocent, and to crush fanaticism with humanity, that responsibility now falls to us.